Howdy, folks. K-Dog here. I don't know if you can see me. I'm trying to turn on the lights here. I'm at the Muncie Showplace 12 this time. I don't know if you can see it right there. But I'm going to make a journey to Middle Earth to see The Hobbit in 3D. So I'll catch you later on what I think of the film. I know this is coming up a little late, but anyway, let's go.
My dear Frodo, you asked me once if I had told you everything there was to know about my adventures. Well, I can honestly say I have told you the truth. I may not have told you all of it.
Bilbo Baggins. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
I can't just go running off into the blue. I am a Baggins.
Wait!
Of Bag End.
Bilbo, allow me to introduce Fili, Kili, Oin, Loin, Darlin, Balin, Biffer, Boffer, Bomber, Dory, Ori, and the leader of our company, Thorin Oakenshield.
Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, the pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, it flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light.
I cannot guarantee his safety.
Understood.
Nor will I be responsible for his fate.
You'll have a tale or two to tell when you come back.
Can you promise that I will come back?
No. And if you do, you will not be the same.
My name is Bilbo Baggins.
Bagginses. What is Bagginses? Precious.
Well, folks, I'm back here at the house, and of course, I got out of the movie around 9:30 or so, and well, what can I say about The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey? Well, there's things I liked about it, and there's things I didn't like about it. I like the fact that it's, it's kind of going back and telling, it is based on the Tolkien book, The Hobbit. But I think, there's just too much to tell. And, Peter Jackson as a director does go into very great detail with the characters and set design and with the visual effects, obviously. And I thought, in terms of a movie as a prequel, it was good, it was entertaining, but I think it was across the lines where it's almost like I'm trying to collect my thoughts here, but it almost felt like we know all this. And like if you never read the book The Hobbit, and so you're basing it all on the movies, you're kind of even if you've never read it, you just look at it like, I know all this, and you know what's bound to happen, but doggone it, you're gonna see it anyway. You're gonna support it. It's kind of like the way we felt with George Lucas doing the Star Wars prequels, and I may get some I may get slammed for this, but I think Peter Jackson has proved, in this case, he has proved to be a new generation of George Lucas. And don't get me wrong. I think in terms of storytellers, I think Peter Jackson is better. I think he knows how to establish something. He knows what he's talking about. And I'm not saying that George Lucas doesn't either, but I think with Peter Jackson can actually tell you a story and actually be a good story. While George Lucas, yeah, the first Star Wars was good, but when it was handed off to other writers and other directors, the product ended up being so much better as opposed if George Lucas just done it himself. That is proven time and time again. Just take a look at the Star Wars prequels. We just saw them because we were fans, but they were not as great as what they could have been had he brought in other people to direct it and write it, which thankfully is happening with the new trilogy and with Disney purchasing Lucasfilm, so things are going to be happening there. But back to The Hobbit, back to Peter Jackson. This is what I hope with Peter Jackson. I hope that he does not turn into to George Lucas. But he is, and the sad thing is that he has turned into that. You look at his track record. The only thing other than Lord of the Rings that was successful that he had done was King Kong, and King Kong was under a lot of criticism. And I myself will go on record and say, I like King Kong. I thought it was a good movie. But however, it is way too long. That movie could have been cut by at least a half hour. There was no need for King Kong to be a 3-hour movie. There just wasn't the need. And thankfully for The Hobbit, it was not 3 hours, but it was pretty close. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes. And to be exact on the running time of The Hobbit. It was still long, and they're still stretching it out. Eventually it was supposed to be a 2-part movie. Now it's 3 parts, so they're just making it a full prequel trilogy to the Lord of the Rings, in which The Hobbit is a prequel book-wise to Lord of the Rings. But anyway, what I was saying is that other than King Kong, Peter Jackson's only known in terms of popularity, known for the Lord of the Rings. And if you've heard the story how the Lord of the Rings got made and heard the story how Star Wars got made, they're both very similar. The big difference is that Star Wars was being pitched as one movie, while the Lord of the Rings was being pitched as the whole trilogy. But it was going to be, it was one budget, and it was given one budget, and it was shot simultaneously. Took 1.5 years to do. Okay. But I just don't want to see. This could easily fall into the traps of what George Lucas did with Star Wars. I mean, it could, if it's not handled properly, it could very well
fall into those traps. But I thought everything about the film looked pretty good. I mean, it had what I did like about it is it had the same linear passage that The Lord of the Rings had. I mean, they used the same theme with some brand new music. They used the same, pretty much, same actors and same look of Middle Earth, and that way there's a constant flow. That this trilogy is tied with the Lord of the Rings, without, but it is two different stories. This story is Bilbo Baggins' story, and eventually, it is going to lead up to the Lord of the Rings portion of the story, where he's going to hand the reins off to Frodo, and I will go ahead and say this, but I'm not really spoiling anything because it is in the trailers. Frodo does make an appearance. Elijah Wood does make a cameo. He doesn't have a real big part. It's just at the beginning, during the introduction, and I will spoil this. Spoiler alert. The scene that has Frodo is basically is just before Frodo's first scene in the Fellowship of the Ring. So eventually it's going to lead up to that point. But other than that, it is worth checking out. I did go see it in 3D. I saw it in Real D 3D. And I know that's not the best way to view it in 3D. If you're going to view 3D, probably the best way to view it would be IMAX. But here's the problem. I don't have an IMAX theater near me. The nearest IMAX theater is 45 minutes away. So in terms of driving time, I am not wanting to drive what's going to cost me $20 in gas and go see a movie that's going to cost me another $20 just to see it in the best presentation. But, I was content with the Real D 3D, and the nice thing was it was shot in 3D. And you say, well, how can you tell? Well, when you look at the characters are round, that you could actually see a roundness of the, like their body and the objects. You can see there's actually depth, as opposed to looking like a giant. I'll try to use these 3D glasses rather than looking like a pop-up book where it just looks kind of like this and it's flat. It would look something like this, where it looks like a giant pop-up book, and it's just not as good. And of course, the theater that I was at was not presenting it in the high frame rate 3D, 48 frames per second 3D. That was not available, but however, they did have Real D 3D, and it's at your leisure what format you want to see it in, because this one I would recommend seeing it in 3D. It is worth it. But if you think 3D is a pain in the butt, you can go still see the 2D or go see the IMAX version. But 3D, and here's my problem with 3D, and I wish that all these filmmakers in the studios would just wise up and do it properly. When you're presenting a movie in 3D, two things need to happen here. One, the story has to acquire a reason for it to be in 3D. 2, actually shoot it in 3D. Don't shoot it in 2D, then convert it. That looks like crap. And the reason why I mean that the story has to have the proper, has to be fitted for 3D to begin with, because it doesn't make any sense just to have stuff going like that at you, and it doesn't make any sense just to have that happen. There has to be a reason why stuff is coming out at you. It doesn't make any sense, other than just, whoa, things are coming out at me and things like that. What's that got to do with the story? What has that got to do with the director's vision? I'll tell you a good one, and this has probably been the best 3D movie I have seen since 3D came out. Disney's A Christmas Carol. I mean, this was the first one that I'd seen in Real D 3D. And this one is the best one I think I've seen so far, other than Toy Story 3. Okay? An actual 3D movie, and there had to be a reason why it was in 3D. Because that's the way Robert Zemeckis wanted to show you what was going on with Scrooge. He wanted the cameras to turn like this, not cut away. There's no... I was just listening to the commentary on this. He was talking about, if you notice this one shot that's during the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence, where they're having the ball and the dancing, you'll notice that the segue into the next scene, there's no cutaway. The camera pans like this, and the scenery changes. And not only that, you can go through something. And now, what's that got to do with The Hobbit? Well, in The Hobbit, there is things like that, and it does do that. There is scenes where, the camera definitely goes through, tunnels and structures and things like that. They actually does take advantage of the 3D, and I found that I found it more effective towards the end of the film, and plus the scene where they're at oh shoot, I lost it. Where the elves live, that set. If where the elves live, and that set, I think is a gorgeous set. It's all done by visual effects, but I think it's really well done. And the 3D really made that look. You could really see the depth in that, and how big and monumental that place was. And of course, like, it does take advantage of, like, if you've seen the Lord of the Rings, there were shots like that where it was like where they're going through the orcs, where the orcs were working and digging out all the other orcs and things like that, going through all the staircases and stuff like that. Okay, imagine that, but in 3D, and it actually looks pretty good. Now, you saw it in 2D with the original Lord of the Rings, and you still were captured by it. So, thus being said, you can watch it in 2D, get the same effect, but in 3D, you do get that extra depth. And of course, whenever there's a battle sequence and there's debris and elements coming at you, it actually comes at you. And some of the creatures actually are pretty close, and they look. It's almost like they're looking at you, and it was really well done. In terms of the 3D, the story. I'm not judging J.R.R. Tolkien, but I felt that this film, and of course this is the first film of a trilogy, and usually that's kind of it's a little boring, because you're setting it up. This portion will set up the story. You're introducing all the characters. You're introducing where they're going. You're introducing the lands, the creatures, blah 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 blah, and the problem. Now the next film, you're going to take all those characters and put them in the worst situation that they could ever get themselves into. And in the third film, eventually is going to be the big payoff where the good guys win, bad guy loses, and it goes on from there. But yeah, I thought it was really well done. In terms of the J.R.R. Tolkien stories, I still think Return of the King is my favorite of definitely the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and The Hobbit was not bad, but I think it would it definitely requires you to go and watch the other films when they come out. The other thing I want to talk about was going into this, I completely forgot as I was watching it that Guillermo del Toro was supposed to be the director of this, and I'm not quite sure what the reason why he quit. He originally was supposed to direct it, but they still used his screenplay, and matter of fact, he is credited for co-writing the script with Peter Jackson and Fran Welsh and whoever their third partner is. And he came, I'm not sure what ideas he had. It'll come out when, the Blu-ray or something like that comes out, and they'll talk about it, And I completely forgot that he was going to be directing this, which would have been an interesting idea. But I'm just curious to know why he left that. I don't know if it was a conflict with. I don't know if he was having some creative problems, or he. I don't know. Yeah, I think it was some creative problems between him and Peter Jackson. But he still kept his name on as the screenwriter, and there was some other things he was credited for. I think it was art design, some of the design of the creatures and things like that, and if you've seen other Guillermo del Toro's movies, you know that he is a very creative guy. He knows how to create creatures. But a friend of mine who's a real big fan of Guillermo del Toro pointed out something, that he's not a big fan of computer-generated imagery. He prefers to do things practically, but he's coming out with a movie called Pacific Rim where it's giant robots, giant alien robots, and so it's going to be a big special effects extravaganza. He does use computer-generated imagery, but he's the type that will use it to enhance something or to do what isn't humanly possible. Well, Peter Jackson, on the hand, he's pretty much almost thrown out practical makeup effects. Now, the orcs, they're still makeup appliance and all that stuff. But there's some scenes in there where Gollum's in there, and they have several trolls, and they're done. The trolls are actually done the same way Gollum is, with the motion capture, motion capture actor, not only providing the voice, but he's also providing the movement. And they eventually replace what the actor really looks like with this troll. And you know how you've seen the effects before. But other than that, I do give it a thumbs up. It's definitely not my favorite of, the whole Middle Earth story, but it is worth checking out. It is worth seeing, and I would recommend the 3D because it actually is shot in 3D, and it does take advantage of the 3D technology in terms of the set design, the visual effects, and it does take advantage of that. But when the trouble with 3D is when you have like a character to character moment, where they're just sitting and having dialogue, and it is kind of pointless there. But other than that, it is a really good 3D movie. So there you go. There's my review of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. I am waiting for the sequels. Hopefully I do like them a little bit better. To say it was a disappointment, no. But it is worth checking out. So do go see it. From me to you, see you later.